This week on the Stepback, I talk about the All-Star Snubs, the mid-season award races, teams to look out for in the second half of the season, and who should be selling with the trade deadline a month out. This is the Stepback. Welcome to the Step Back. I'm Andrew Martini. Let's get right into things. The first thing I want to talk about this week is the All-Star Game snubs. So last week on Tuesday, the reserves were released for the All-Star teams. And I would say there's quite a lot of guys you could say were snubs from the team, especially at the time. Now, this is about a week later. So, two of my biggest snubs at the time when reserves were released are actually on the All-Star team now. So, I guess I'll talk about those guys first. I thought the biggest snub was Devin Booker. I appreciate what Chris Paul had been doing with the Suns. I think Chris Paul absolutely deserves to be an all-star this year. But I think Devin Booker should have been an all-star over him anyway. And, I mean, like I said before, it doesn't really matter now because Anthony Davis needed the injury reserve replacement, so then Booker just gets to get in anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But I think just to begin with, Booker should have been on the reserve list, and Chris Paul should have been the injury replacement. We're getting a little bit into semantics here, so it doesn't really matter. I think both guys deserve to be there, but I definitely think Booker was the guy that should have been there for the Suns first, as good as Chris Paul has been. The other guy that I think was a big snub was Domantas Sabonis from the Indiana Pacers. In the East, I can say, at least for myself, I think there are a little bit more snubs or guys you could argue as snubs than there were in the West. I think the West, it was really mostly just Devin Booker, maybe DeMar DeRozan. I honestly, off the top of my head, I really can't think of anyone else that really deserves to be at the All-Star game in the West. But in the East, I think there are a lot of guys that could have made the team. And I think the two guys that you could have swapped in and out for the All-Star team were Ben Simmons and Nikola Vucevic. And for me personally, I would have taken out Vucevic and I would have put in Domantas Sabonis. They're averaging similar numbers. Yes, I do think Vucevic has been better than Sabonis. But at the same time, the Pacers are a better team, and the numbers really aren't that too different. But at the end of the day, like, both guys are going to be there anyway now, because they need a Kevin Durant injury replacement. So Sabonis gets to come in anyway. But that, for me, in the East was the biggest snub. Just based on the fact, like, the numbers are so similar. Vooch really isn't averaging that many more points. The rebound numbers are similar. I think Sabonis is averaging more assists. And the Pacers are just winning more. And I know that's just because, like, they're not as injury-riddled as the Magic. But, again, I think when players have that similar of a difference in their, like, counting numbers, I think you got to take team record into account here. And since, like, the All-Star reserves were released, the Pacers are now under 500. So now it doesn't really look that good for them, but at the time of the reserve list, they were over 500. So That's what I would have thought. The other guy I think you can argue that deserves to be an all-star this year is Trae Young. I mean, Trae Young is still having a great season despite the Hawks being a little bit under 500. The Hawks haven't quite figured out who they are this season. And, just the whole team just kind of feels awkward. But Trae Young, despite that, is averaging like 28 and 9 still. And those are definitely all-star worthy numbers. And I think for me, when I did my original all-star predictions, I had both Sabonis and Trae Young over Ben Simmons and Vucevic. And I probably would still have that today. I know you can make a good argument for Ben Simmons with him being this, versatile, all-around great defender, probably, one of, if not the best defender in the league. But I think Simmons had a rough first half of the season. And it seems like he was rewarded for like his month in February, his like half of January and then like 3 weeks in February, as opposed to being judged on the season as a whole. As a whole, I don't necessarily think Ben Simmons should be an all-star over Trae Young. But that's just my personal opinion. In my original predictions, I also had Colin Sexton over Zach LaVine. At that time, their numbers were pretty similar, and the Cavs had a better record than the Bulls. Since then, the Cavs lost like 10 straight games and are like 13 and 21, and the Bulls are actually in the playoff race still. So I think Zach LaVine is definitely a perfect pick. Not to mention that Zach LaVine's numbers jumped like 3 points since my quarter season predictions. So I think that one's definitely correct. I don't really have a problem with any of the other all-stars in the East. You could argue for one of the Hornets guys, but I don't think they should be in over Simmons, Vucevic, Sabonis, or even Trae Young. I am glad that Julius Randle finally got to be an all-star this season. That's great for him. It's great for the Knicks. The Knicks are over 500 and might have a playoff team this season, so that'll be exciting. In the West, I have no problem with any of the all-stars. I think as it stands right now, they're perfect. We knew Anthony Davis was going to get the injury replacement, so it didn't really matter, and it was pretty obvious Booker was going to get the nod over anyone else in the West. And so other than, the initial reserve list, I don't really have a problem with the West All-Stars. Let me segue to my mid-season award picks, because we're about right at the halfway point of the season. The All-Star break is this weekend, so I think it's a good time to check back in to the award races and see, who I've got at each pick. So I'm going to start with the MVP. The MVP race, since kind of like the first beginning of the season, I think the front runner has been Joel Embiid. Towards the beginning as well, I think Jokic was definitely a number 2. And I think since then, the Nuggets have struggled, and I don't have Jokic number 2, but I still have MVP as Joel Embiid. They have the best record in the East, and Embiid's averaging nearly 30 and 10. He's playing great defense. The Sixers are great. And I don't really have I don't really see another person right now that can really take it away from Embiid at this point. I don't think he's the clear-cut winner. But right now, he's got the most momentum to me to win MVP. Now, I do think in this second half of the season, I do think that we could see someone else come in and snatch the MVP. The guy I'm thinking of who could come in and actually take the MVP would be Damian Lillard. So right now, Lillard's playing without Nurkic. He's playing without McCollum. And they're 18-14. I think they're in the playoffs in the West. And if you think about it, like if they go on a 6-game winning streak, like they're only going to be like 2 or 3 games behind the 2 or 3 seed. And if the Blazers by the end of the season end up as like a 2 seed over the Lakers and the Clippers, with the Jazz being number 1, I could definitely see, with Damian Lillard being healthy, I could see Lillard winning MVP if he has just like a phenomenal second half to the season. Bottom line, I just think that this MVP race is wide open still. But at the moment, I just don't see anyone that could win it right now over Embiid. By 3/4 into the season, we're probably going to know who the MVP is. If no one's separated themselves from the pack. I don't think LeBron will win it this season. He is playing like every game still. But I don't know if the Lakers are going to have the seeding or the record to warrant a LeBron MVP just with Anthony Davis out. I definitely think with Anthony Davis playing, even though he wasn't playing that well for Anthony Davis, the Lakers could get a much better record. And then in turn, LeBron would be in the running for MVP. I think Kevin Durant on the Nets is an automatic out. I just don't think he's played enough games yet, and I don't know if he will play enough games for me to warrant an MVP consideration. I think if it's anyone from the Nets, it's got to be Harden. And I, as big of a Harden guy as I am, and I don't think you'll find a bigger Harden guy than me, I don't really think anyone on the Nets should win an MVP. Maybe if Durant's out for like 3/4 of the season, which I don't think he will be, then I could see the Harden MVP pick. And I don't think that's too unrealistic, because he is averaging 25 points, 11 assists, like 5 or 6 rebounds. So he's got MVP level numbers. And he is kind of like the engine for this Nets team, especially with Durant out, as he's kind of found his groove with his new teammates. So I think that's another guy. If like the Nets just have like a great second half of the season and they end up as the first seed in the East, I could actually see a Harden MVP. So now that I think about it, I don't think that's too unrealistic, especially now that the media loves Harden in Brooklyn. Outside of those guys I mentioned, I don't really see anyone. Maybe if the Nuggets just go on a tear in the second half, maybe Jokic could get it. But again, they'd have to be a top 2 or 3 seed in the West, I think. I don't think anyone for the Jazz would be getting the MVP. I think they're just kind of like a team kind of vibe, kind of like the Miami Heat last year, where they were just like a great team. And they don't really have like that dominant star that just takes over games, as good as Jimmy Butler and Donovan Mitchell are. They're not like, they're not the LeBron James. They're not the Hardens. They're not the Currys. They're not the Durants of the world. And another guy I think should be in the conversation for MVP is Kawhi Leonard. He's got MVP numbers before. He's like 27, like 6-6 right now. And he's not doing the load management thing, so I don't think that will be a case against him this season. But I don't think he's going to have the media narrative to win it. But I do think he should be in the conversation. So let's move on to Rookie of the Year. I think right now, hands down, without a doubt, LaMelo Ball is Rookie of the Year. I think it's his race to lose at this point. Since he's been starting for the Hornets, He's been better. The Hornets have been better. Um, and I think they're 17 and 18 right now, I believe. Only one game under 500. And he's averaging like 15, 6 and 6. So he's got the numbers over everyone. He's got the media highlights. Anytime he throws a pass, people are going crazy, even if it's just like a basic bounce pass. And the Hornets are a decent team. The only way for him to lose Rookie of the Year at this point is injury, I think. The two guys I would say are below him. Actually, I think there are like three guys below him. And I don't know what order I'd put these guys in, but it would be Halliburton, Edwards, and Quickly. After that, I don't really think any of the rookies kind of deserve to be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. For sixth man, I have Jordan Clarkson. Again, he's having a phenomenal season, averaging 18 points off the bench. He's going to win the score 20 points with poor defense award. So, that seems about right. I don't see any other team with like a definite six-man candidate as Clarkson. There were earlier in the season, but since then, guys have missed games, whether it's due to injury or health and safety protocols. And some of the numbers have dipped while Clarkson's has relatively stayed the same. So right now it's Clarkson for me, and I don't know if that will change. Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert. He anchors the Jazz defense. Jazz got one of the best defenses in the league. I think it's Gobert, and I think it's hard to take it away from Gobert this year. And then Coach of the Year, Quinn Snyder. The Jazz are just sweeping these awards, man. Yeah, best record in the league. Looking like it'll stay that way. I think you got to reward Quinn Snyder here. And then for most improved player, at the quarter mark of the season, I had Christian Wood. Basically, since then, Christian Wood hasn't played a single game because he sprained his ankle. And the only other guy that I think is in the conversation for most improved player is Jeremy Grant. And honestly, just because Grant has played more games, I'm going to give it to Grant. As great as Christian Wood has been, I don't think he's going to have the games advantage, and I don't think he should win it over Grant. As much as I love Christian Wood and I want to see a Rocket win that award, I don't think he deserves it over Grant. And it's unfortunate because I think it actually would have been a close race between the two. Next, I want to talk about some teams that, I want to look out for in the second half to maybe make a run into the playoffs or, take a top seed. In the East, I think there's quite a few teams to look out for. The one I talk about like all the time is the Wizards. And the Wizards are 7-3 in their last games, their last 10 games. They're only one game behind Atlanta, who is the 11th seed. Actually, no, they're tied with Atlanta, who's the 11th seed. And they're 2 games behind the Bulls for the 10th seed. So, if they kind of keep up this pace, they'll be 500 or close to 500 by the end of the season. They've got a lot of games to make up still. But, it'll be close. And I don't think the Wizards are done for. I think they've finally found their groove. Westbrook has finally settled into his role. So he's fitting in. I definitely think they can make a run for either one of the top 8 seeds or, the 9 or 10 seed. The other teams in the East that I want to keep an eye on are, well, it's actually 2 teams, are the Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors. Both teams did not have a great start for the season. Now both of those teams are 500 currently. So I do want to see how those teams improve in the second half of the season and where they end up. Because I do think it's I think it's realistic for, them to be competing for that 4 seed. I think the top 3 seeds are locked in with Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. No one else in the East really strikes me as, on the level of those teams yet. I think Miami's capable of playing on that level. I think Boston is capable of playing on that level, but for whatever reason this season, they just aren't yet. But the East is just really, really close this season. Like after Milwaukee, the 4 seed is New York with 18 and 17. Then it's Miami, Boston, Toronto, all with 17 and 17 records. Then right under Toronto, it's Charlotte, that's 16 and 17. Indiana with 15 and 17. Chicago with 15 and 17. And then Atlanta, Washington are only a couple games behind them. So, the East is very, very close this season. In the West, I think for me the biggest team to watch out for is Portland. I think once they finally get healthy, this team could definitely make a run for a top seed. They are 4 games behind the Clippers, 4.5 games behind the Lakers. But I do think it's realistic for them to just, hit like a 6 or 7 game winning streak twice in the second half of the season and just, be a top 3 seed. I think another team to watch out is Dallas. It's looking like they're starting to find their groove as well, and they're definitely going to be competing. Outside of those couple of teams, I don't think any other team will really surprise people. Maybe Memphis will once they get Jaren Jackson Jr. back. We'll see. I think OKC is going to stay towards the bottom. Sacramento has been a train wreck this season. Houston, I don't even. Houston makes me sad. And Minnesota is just like the worst team in the league. Maybe New Orleans. I don't think their defense is good enough, though, to get them there. They're only 2.5 games behind the 9 and 10 seeds, so it's not unrealistic for them to be at least in the play-in tournament. But I don't know if they're necessarily a team I would look out for. Zion's certainly been fantastic this season, but a lot of that roster is just an awkward fit for me, personally. So, we just talked about teams that we should look to maybe surprise us in the second half. I do want to talk about the teams that I think at this point should probably just give up and become sellers. Number one on that list, and I think a lot of people are aware of this, are the Houston Rockets. They're 11 and 21. They've lost, 11 straight games, longest losing streak in the league right now. And it has been rough. Since Christian Wood has been injured, they have not looked like a good team. And I'm not quite sure if they actually want to tank this season, but I think they should. Because, they're not going to have a better record than Miami. I think that's just out of the question. And that's really the only reason for them to not tank, so they wouldn't lose their pick if they were better than Miami and OKC. And the season has just been such an up and down for them. And right now it's hit rock bottom, and it seems like it's only getting worse. I would look to Houston to sell. I think the best piece for Houston to sell, I know a lot of people are talking about Victor Oladipo and PJ Tucker, but I think the best piece for Houston to sell is Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon has had a bounce back season for him. His percentages are up. His scoring stayed the same, and his defense is still really solid. And if I'm a 500 team, I would look to upgrade to Eric Gordon. And I think a team like the Celtics should be looking to grab Eric Gordon. I think he fits what they need. He's another ball handler, plays good defense, can shoot, can drive, can finish. and he would fit right into that exception they have. And honestly, they probably only need to give up like a first round pick for him. Now, I guess to dissuade Boston from doing this would be you would have Eric Gordon on the books for another couple of seasons after this. And I think that would push them into the luxury tax if they aren't already. And I'm not sure if Boston wants to do that. But if they are looking to upgrade their roster, I think that's the guy they need to go for. At least, a lot of teams I think he would fit on. Indiana could look to do it. I don't know if they have the pieces to do it. I think you'd have to probably trade LeVert, and I don't think the Rockets want LeVert at all. So I don't think that would happen. The Wizards could be a good one, but again, I don't think they have the money to do it, but I definitely think it would improve the Wizards. It would give them some defense, although I don't know if it would matter. And it would also give them another ball handler and another scorer, which they could definitely use off the bench. Oladipo's an interesting one to get traded, though, because reports came out that the Rockets offered him like a 2-year, $45 million extension, which is the max they could have offered at that point in time. That just kind of seems like a common courtesy thing. I think Victor Oladipo is looking for something around that money and probably longer term. And probably with a team he actually wants to go for. I think Dallas could be buyers from the Rockets, though. I think either Oladipo or Gordon would fit on that team. It would fit a need for them. I think they have the money to just like absorb both either one or the other's contract. But I don't know if they would be willing to give up a pick for Eric Gordon or a pick for Oladipo. I'm not sure what the Rockets' asking price is, but I definitely think a first-round pick for Eric Gordon is fair, and I'm not sure what Oladipo's value is. Same thing with PJ Tucker. Maybe somebody like Denver would want him. Dallas could use him. Honestly, any team could use PJ Tucker. It's just I'm not sure what the value exactly is of Tucker, and I'm not sure if the Rockets are even going to trade him. As a Rockets fan, I would like Tucker to be traded. I would like Oladipo to be traded. I would like to keep Eric Gordon just because I feel like some kind of stability for the organization would be good. But if a team's going to offer us a first-round pick for Eric Gordon, I would absolutely take it. Maybe somebody like the Pelicans would take Eric Gordon. Maybe we take on JJ Redick and a first-round pick, and then we waive Redick, and then Redick can go sign with whatever team he wants. I'm not sure if the money actually fits like that, but it would be close. Other teams, I think, should be sellers. OKC, obviously, they've got George Hill, who could definitely help out a playoff team. Al Horford definitely could help out a playoff team. I'm just not sure if the money could work. And outside of those two guys, they don't have too many sellers. Maybe a Muscala. But I definitely think they should be looking to try to find a deal for George Hill before his contract expires. Sacramento should be a seller, I think. This has just been an abysmal season for them. I think they would like to trade Buddy Hield, but Buddy Hield's trade value just keeps going down the longer they hold on to him. And I'm not sure you'd want to sell him at his lowest. Maybe you're hoping for him to build up his value again so that you could trade him for something better. And I'm not sure who would actually want Buddy Hield. He makes around $22 million a season, and he only scores 15 points a game. And for what he offers, you'd probably be better off just going for Eric Gordon, who makes less money over that time span, plays better defense, and gives you similar, if not better, production than what Hield has been giving the Kings this season. I think you could see the Pelicans become sellers. I think they want to try to make a push for the playoffs. But by that March 25th deadline, I think they're going to kind of have to figure out what they want to do with this season. I think they'd prefer to keep J.J. Redick around as a vet presence. I'm not sure what they think of Eric Bledsoe. I think they should trade him, but I don't know how they evaluate it. I think they should hang on to Lonzo. He's definitely stepped up his game since the trade rumors started. So I think they should hang on to him and see what kind of price he is in the offseason. And just kind of keep developing their young guys. In the East, Detroit, they don't really have much to sell, but Wayne Ellington could help out a playoff team. Cleveland doesn't have much to sell. Orlando, I think, is the biggest seller in the East, or at least should be. I think this is just a lost season for Orlando. It's just so injury-riddled, and you really have no one other than Vucevic, Fournier, and Terrence Ross right now that can score on the perimeter. And I think it might be time to move off of Fournier. He expires this season, and he could really help out a playoff team. You know, he's got shooting. He's a good ball handler. I think a playoff team would like to have him. I don't know what you could get for him. But again, a team like Boston could look to get him. You know, maybe Miami could take him. I don't know if they have the money to do it. But that's definitely a guy I'd be looking to trade, especially if I'm Orlando. But I'm not sure where Orlando's head is at, because I feel like people have been telling Orlando to rebuild, and they just want to make like the 8th seed every year. The other guy in Orlando would be a great pickup for any team is Aaron Gordon. Phenomenal defender, vertical spacer, can shoot, can handle. Honestly, any team should be looking to trade for Aaron Gordon. Right now, he's been injured. I don't know when he's coming back. But he would be a great pickup for anyone looking for a defensive player, especially at that power forward spot. Like the Celtics, that should be the Celtics' number one target. He can rebound, play defense, very athletic, would fit right into what they need. So they could probably stop that 2-center lineup. Even Washington should maybe look for him. I think that would be a good upgrade for Utah, although I don't know what it would take to get him. Maybe even Phoenix. Again, I don't know what it would take to get Aaron Gordon. And even for Portland, I think you could trade like Rodney Hood. I don't know what kind of picks they have available, because I think they have one going to the Rockets this year. So I don't know what kind of picks they have available. And even Dallas. I think he'd be a great fit in Dallas. Again, I don't know what kind of picks Dallas has available, but I think Aaron Gordon's a great target. Outside of those teams I mentioned, I don't really think anyone else should be sellers, especially with the play-in tournament this year. Like, it doesn't really benefit the 9-10 seeds to be sellers, even if they are not that close to the 7-8 seeds, because all you have to do is win one game and you're in the playoffs. You know, or you have to win a couple games and you're in the playoffs. So those teams I really don't think should be sellers at all. Now, as it is every week, it is time for the weekly power rankings. At number 1, just like last week, I have the Utah Jazz. Great record. Not much else to say about them. They've just been phenomenal all season. Lakers, number 2. Again, consistency. They've been number 1 all season until I put the Jazz at number 1 last week. Number 3, this is the big shakeup, is the Brooklyn Nets. They have been very phenomenal all of February, and I think they've been better than the Sixers and the Clippers, who I had over them, I believe, last week. I know the Sixers were over them. And I do think it's realistic that the Nets take over, the best record in the East by the end of the season. Number 4, I still have the Sixers. I'm confident in the Sixers' ability to play defense. I'm confident in Joel Embiid, very confident with how Ben Simmons has been playing this last few weeks. And hopefully Tobias Harris comes back soon and they can get back on a roll. Number 5, I have the Clippers. Just like these other teams, they've just been very consistent this season. Not much else to say about the Clippers. Number 6, I have the Bucks. They just got Drew Holiday back. I might expect them to rise. Again, they could even get the 1 seed at this point in the East. Number 7, I have the Suns. 4 seed in the West, playing very well. Devin Booker has finally figured out how to play with Chris Paul. Everyone's kind of clicking. Number 8, I'm going to have the Portland Trailblazers. I'm very confident in Damian Lillard right now. They are 6-4 in their last 10. They have lost 4 straight. But I still think the Blazers are in a good position. Number 9 is tough for me because I don't think a lot of teams have really separated themselves from the rest of their conferences and the rest of the teams around them. But I'm going to put San Antonio. San Antonio is the 5 seed in the West. They're 17-12. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. They just came back from, a few games off because of health and safety protocols. And what else can I say about San Antonio other than they're just like this consistent team that you just never expect to be good, and then they are. At number 10, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do the New York Knicks. Yes, the New York Knicks, after years of mediocrity and losing and bamboozling, are 18-7. They're the 4 seed in the East. I don't know if they could keep it up, but I want to reward the Knicks, and I want to give them an appearance on this Power Rankings. Shout out Julius Randle. Shout out Emmanuel Quickley. Shout out Tom Thibodeau. Oh boy. Here we come, New York. Well, that's it for the Step Back this week. I've been Andrew Martini. This has been the Step Back, and I'll see you next week.